To briefly introduce myself, my name is Kristiina Pernits. I'm working in SALTO Training and Cooperation Resource Center as a senior expert. I'm mainly responsible for the implementation and development of Youth Bus in the sense of the Youth Bus strategy, including both the more concrete elements of that work as well as the topics and questions related to learning in youth work and volunteering and its recognition and validation. We are based in Germany, in the German National Agency for the Youth Programs. That's maybe also good to know as a bit of context. And indeed, us here in SALTO Training and Cooperation, especially my colleague Eda and myself, and the colleagues from 4 national agencies, Estonia, Slovenia, France, and Germany. They are also present in the meeting. We have been embarking on a journey to explore where are we with the topic of validation of non-formal learning, non-formal and informal learning, when it comes to the specific context of learning in youth work and volunteering. And we also needed to have a more concrete focus on our explanations. We chose the focus of the validation processes in higher education context, why I will explain you in a moment. So yes, as to the context, we have basically this one question or 3 questions which are the same and at the same time not the same. Why did we embark such a journey? Why is it us doing such work? And why is that study the kind of a study as it is? And why this exploration in the first place? Just briefly about the more general context. There is generally high interest in the youth field, so youth work and volunteering in recognition. Several tools have been developed by different stakeholders on different levels, European, national levels, to help to visualize, explain what is the value of the engagement and especially the learning value of engagement in these non-formal and informal contexts. At the same time, there's a lot of dynamics and developments also in the educational landscape to try to consider and take into account other pathways through validation processes. These developments can be regularly seen, read in the European inventory for validation of non-formal and informal learning. There was a recent one published last year, which also in general terms described the developments, the progress in this regard. More specifically, we, as I've been mentioning, work with Youth Bus, the recognition tool for the Erasmus Plus Youth and European Solidarity Corps programs as such, with its aim to help learners to document their learning through that has been happening through the engagement in these programs. Through this function, we also act as a bit of a bridge between the youth sector and further sectors involved in validation questions. And Very concretely, for justified reasons, so we are also faced with questions by learners, by young people, asking us what it is that they can do with their Youth Pass certificate. What is it? What is the value that they get out of it? Where can they show it, and where can it somehow help them in their further pathways? All in all, it probably is not a surprise for you. We have the impression that generally the validation of competencies developed in youth work and volunteering, it seems to remain a challenge. It seems to be a rather abstract topic for people in the youth fields. Maybe the role that the youth field can carry is also not so clear. It's seen as a process that is happening somewhere else or owned by other stakeholders, namely those in formal education and also employment, as it has a lot to do with the skills and qualifications topics. So it seems to remain a challenge, but we wanted to know why. Where are we with these topics? Why is it a challenge? Where's the gap? And yeah, why? So we came up with this validation project with the partners, as mentioned. We wanted to explore the topic and chose the angle of validation in the context of higher education. The objectives of the projects are to gain insight into the state of affairs and possible perspectives about this topic, to raise awareness that youth work and volunteering have learning value and are context to be considered in the validation procedures, and also that there's Youth Pass, which is a widely used tool in the European youth work contexts and has the potential to make that learning visible. I wanted to explore what is needed to develop that topic further, to build trust and promote our topics in validation contexts. Want to share our learnings in this topic and also develop recommendations for further steps. Why us? In SALTO Training and Cooperation, we have two main work themes, big themes that we work on. On the one hand, there's the European Training Strategy, which is the focus of which is the capacity building in European youth work, and major work of ours relates to Youth Pass and the Youth Pass strategy with its related topics. A brief look into what is Youth Pass, how we see that. I imagine that most of you would already have heard about Youth Pass, and what often people are most familiar with is this certificate function of Youth Pass. Indeed, it is also a certificate, but it's also closely connected to the so-called Youth Pass process. It's part of the Youth Pass concept, the Youth Pass process, or a reflection process through which we encourage the organizers of activities within these two youth programs, EU youth programs, to put learning on the agenda and to keep it on the agenda. In more concrete terms, it means that the learners in the various activities are invited to reflect what it is that they would like to learn through their engagement in the respective projects or in volunteering. And also to regularly reflect on what they have been learning on the way, and of course also towards the end of the project to put it down in the way that it can be this description of the learning outcomes can be included on the certificate. And this whole work is supported by a strategy. There's a Youth Pass strategy document published in 2021 that describes the measures needed to implement and develop Youth Pass. by SALTO training and cooperation in cooperation with the European Commission, National Agency Network, and other stakeholders, and also describing the broader, more conceptual, strategic measures and topics that relate to the implementation of Youth Pass and support the general understanding of the learning value of youth work and volunteering. So that's where also the connection to our work on recognition and validation comes from. This is an example, a fictional example of a Youth Pass certificate issued in European Solidarity Corps program. You can see the 3 parts that includes firstly the first page, which mainly serves as the confirmation of participation. There's the second part, which describes the learning context within, in this case, the European Solidarity Corps volunteering, and where there's the possibility to include the description of the competencies developed by the learner, by the volunteer in this case, as well as the possibility to add further information and references. And the third part enables to include more details about the project, partners, languages, duration, and so on. I've been mentioning already, Youth Pass is a recognition tool for the context of Erasmus Plus youth program and the European Solidarity Corps. It's based on the self-assessment of competencies in combination with the strong recommendation, encouragement to carry that out in a dialogue process. So supported by either the mentor in volunteering or other support persons, depending on the type of the project. And we currently have more than 2 million certificates issued out there in Europe. So where does Youth Pass then fit into these debates about recognition and validation? In the youth field, we look at recognition in a more holistic manner. There are mainly 4 dimensions of recognition that we describe when talking about recognition of youth work and the recognition of learning in youth work. There's the self-recognition, the understanding of the value for the field and the individuals themselves, the social recognition, where the value should be visible and understood by other stakeholders in the society, the political recognition that describes how youth work and its learning value are embedded in policy or strategic documents. And fourth, there's what we in some youth work specific recognition debates call the formal recognition, and which to a large extent coincides with what we're talking about when it comes to validation of learning. There are some more elements to that, but to a large extent it's the similar concept. And here, when you have had a look at the study and when you are generally aware of the validation concepts, you are definitely already aware of the 4 stages or the 4 elements of validation: identification, documentation, assessment, and certification. With Youth Pass, we clearly support the identification and documentation phases of validation through this educational reflection process that is part of the Youth Pass concept, and through the certificate made available for its the documentation of the competencies. Just briefly about the use of Youth Pass. As I said, there's currently more than 2 million certificates out there. This figure was, I think, extracted yesterday or 2 days ago from the Youth Pass website. And one of the sources of information that we also largely rely on when talking about the use of Youth Pass is the array the work of the RAY network, whose task is to explore the impact of the EU youth programs. They also have some questions about Youth Pass, and according to the survey, regular monitoring survey results, 92% of project leaders report that Youth Pass has been used in the project. This is somewhat different, of course, depending on the type of the activities. Generally, it's 92%, and also a very big extent. So 89% of the participants who have been going through the Youth Pass process confirm that it has been helpful for them to have better awareness of their learning and development. And briefly about the why for that focus of the study as well. So generally, one of the aims of the validation processes is to support making use of the learning outcomes gained or acquired in non-formal and informal learning context to make use of that also in further learning. There's the famous 2012 recommendation on validation of non-formal and informal learning. We refer to that a lot in our study. It sets many basic concepts for the whole EU level, EU-wide process on validation. And among others, it also invites the education providers to facilitate access to formal education, or if appropriate, also awards either exemptions or add credits based on the learning outcomes from non-formal and informal learning settings. In higher education contexts, validation processes are mostly in place. They have a certain tradition already since quite some time. And also when generally speaking about the validation standards or in non-formal and validation of non-formal and informal learning, and these standards often are also aligned with formal education. So these are the arguments that or the background thoughts that facilitated finding that specific angle that we wanted to look at when designing the study, as there was definitely a need for a specific angle. Otherwise, the whole complexity of the validation processes would have just been too much for us to explore. There are some further specifics to the study, namely, we don't look at the whole sphere of non-formal and informal learning. We look at the context of youth work and volunteering, as these are the contexts of our EU youth programs. And also in certain aspects, we don't even look at all youth work and volunteering, but specifically what concerns this learning in the EU programs. We have 4 country studies, so we're only looking at these 4 countries, and these 4 countries are quite different in terms of both educational systems and setups, size, and traditions in certain areas connected to these topics. What is common for the whole study is that we had desk research for all 4 countries, and also then supported by interviews with experts. But we are also quite modest when it comes to the claim or the ambition related to that study. Indeed, these 4 countries are quite different. Also, the setup of the country studies, the case studies, has been somewhat different. So we are not pretending to have a fully coherent or comprehensive picture of the topic, but rather snapshots. But even with these snapshots, hopefully we managed to shed some light to this complex topic and already support some of the reflections on this. So, it seems in terms of the structural conditions in the 4 countries that one can say quite confidently the validation efforts are aligned with the EU level processes and developments, and there is in many occasions the reference to the 4 elements of validation, which you have also already seen in one of the previous slides, namely the identification, documentation, assessment, and certification elements of validation. There are legal frameworks existing for validation, as is also expected as part of the famous 2012 recommendation on validation. All member states have been expected to set up frameworks for enabling validation of non-formal and informal learning. And the 3 main motivators for enabling validation seem to be the mobility of learners, even though here it should be mentioned that it's not only meant as mobility between different contexts of learning, but mainly the mobility between universities. So when we are talking about credit transfer in universities, we also talk about the transfer of the credits that have been acquired in another university. One of the very important motivators is also to provide equal access, or at least broader access, to higher education opportunities in terms of inclusion and providing the opportunities to people who come from perhaps disadvantaged backgrounds. Even though also there it can be seen in broader terms as well. For example, in Germany, there is quite like traditionally well-defined pathway on for how young people enter higher education institutions through the so-called Abitur, and with the help of validation processes, this pathway should also have some more flexibility added to that. And also active citizenship or civic engagement to highlight and emphasize the importance of civic engagement within the lives of young people and by young people is an important motivator to make that more prominent and visible also in higher education contexts. Regarding the procedures, there seems to be quite a variety, whereas portfolio is perhaps not surprisingly the most common method to document and also use as basis for the assessment of the validation, like the source context and the outcomes, learning outcomes of the young individuals. There do not seem to be a lot of cases of standard portfolio templates. They seem to be quite diverse, often defined or described by the universities themselves. And there also does not seem to be a lot of use made of externally described or provided portfolio templates. There are cases of individual evaluations and expert consultations by the respective professors in their respective areas, even though this does not seem to be the prevalent way of approaching the evaluation. And there seems also to be a lot of variety both across and between, but even within institutions. Often the responsibility for the validation processes is on the faculty or department levels, and there seem to be quite some differences between these, even though it's the same university. And all of that leads to, or seems to be leading to, inconsistent outcomes. There seem to be cases where, for a similar experience, one can get a quite a different number of credits, for example. The common challenges have been listed here on the slide. It remains difficult to describe, assess, and translate the competencies that have been acquired in non-formal and informal learning contexts. With translation, I mean the terminology that aligns with the well, here we've written formal education more broadly, but what needs to be considered is also the terminology of that specific area of studies. So it's easier to transfer the credits from other formal contexts rather than and more challenging to consider the non-formal and informal learning context for that. There is resistance, cultural, academic resistance, and probably also well-justified skepticism or even fear of diluting standards. These two contexts, non-formal learning or specifically the youth work and volunteering, they are inherently also different from the standards and the nature of higher education, and the emphasis of working with the individuals are on different points. Therefore, also the standards as considered important for the higher education institution, similar to how youth work wants to safeguard the nature of youth work. It's understandable that higher education contexts feel responsible and need to safeguard their contexts. Thank you, Snezhana. The procedures seem to be heavy, requiring high individual investment and extensive evidence documentation. Also, it seems to be obstacle sometimes when the people have perhaps lost some of the documentation of their learning outcomes or competence development. The flexibility in assessment methods does not seem to be used. The possibility to make use of flexible assessment methods, not extensively. And there is generally a low awareness and uptake by learners. Also, this opportunity to have competencies acquired in youth work and volunteering, to have it validated for the benefit of the further studies in higher education. These opportunities are not generally promoted a lot. There are quite a few promising examples as well, though. I will not mention them in one by one, but there are several referring either to certain national level projects or systemic setups within higher education systems or within universities. And also generally, it seems that youth work, social work, and health-related studies seem to be more open to flexible learning pathways and for considering the learning outcomes also from the respective practical engagement. Conclusions. There's a need for raising awareness of validation opportunities, especially towards the target groups that have most to gain from these opportunities. There's a need for improved guidance and support to the identification and documentation of prior learning. So specifically these first two phases or elements of the validation processes, it appeared from quite some of the explorations that whereas the certification phase itself seems to be well defined and functioning. In the previous stages, the individuals have been left somewhat alone. So they would need some more guidance and support in these first stages. There's a need for more training of assessors and academic staff in order to support the understanding of and application of the validation methods. As said, there seems to be a lot of variety and therefore some work towards harmonization and standardization of the validation practices would be beneficial. We've listed here something which is nothing less than cultural transformation in the higher education contexts. One can wish for that. Alongside the shift towards competence-based thinking within the higher education institutions, as opposed to pure diploma-based thinking. There's a need and potential for expanding the use of digital tools for validation. There are a number of them available, but they can be developed and broadened to support all of these efforts and developments. Sustainable funding for the validation services in the different contexts is needed, and also cross-sectorial cooperation in order for support the understanding of the specificities, needs, and the potentials in the different sectors.
So what we plan to do now, as promised, was that after Christina shared the common insights, first to have the commentary or reflection from the people that were involved from the 4 countries, and then we will also open the space for questions. But if you have some questions and you don't want to forget them, please feel free to use the chat as well. So then, without further ado, I would invite Kats Kivstik from Estonia, who was one of the researchers from the Estonian side, Clément Dupois from France, also the researcher in the French study, Elisabeta Lakosil from Slovenia National Agency, who will then give us perspective from Slovenia, and then Christina as well, once again, to try to give the insight a little bit from the German perspective as well. So they are here with us to also give a bit of a perspective of how it looked like in each of the respective countries. But I would first invite you to tell us really briefly what was your role in the research or the study itself. So Kats, yeah.
Hi, my name is Kats Kivistik, and I was one of the 2 authors of the national study, Estonian national study.
Thanks, Kats. Clément?
Hello, I'm an external consultant, and I was to coordinate the study in France. I had a look of a kind of practitioner because I've been a participant of youth exchanges, a youth worker, a director of youth exchanges, and I worked on with European programs. and now I develop solutions on valuing people's competences.
Thanks, Clément. Elisabetta?
Yeah, hello from my side as well. In our national agency, I cover the topics of, projects, volunteering projects within European Solidarity Corps, and also the topic of non-formal learning. So I was the one who advocated in our NA to join this project when I learned about it. So I focused more on the content, and then I worked together with my coworker Mojca, who was in contact with researchers, but we closely worked together at all times.
Thank you, Elisabetta. And Christina?
So yes, on behalf of SALTO Training and Cooperation, we have been coordinating the overall project and the study, but also us being based in Germany, we have been in touch with the author of the German part of the study, the German case study. The study itself was made by Professor Dr. Ingo Bleich. He's the professor of social work in the International University of Applied Sciences. Unfortunately, he was not able to join the workshop today, so I'm trying to fill in for him as good as I can, also from the German point of view.
Thank you all, and thank you for taking your time for joining us today. And my first question to you is, so when you look back at the time that you were doing the research or participating in which ways, what are some of or what is the highlight for you, or what stayed with you kind of as an insight from the whole process? And maybe we can have the same order for this question as well.
Yeah, thank you. I guess one of the things was surprise how few cases there are where this informal or non-formal prior knowledge or experience is like really validated or accepted by higher education institutions. So there were really very few cases, but the positive was the fact that I'd say that maybe year or two more ago, I didn't know that what concerns youth work programs, that they are accepting voluntary work and youth work in admission, as they are giving extra points for that. So that was a positive surprise. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Clément?
Yes, for the vision I have in what was going on in France, it's more focused, it's more a cultural issue than a technical issue. I mean that, and I will talk for French situation, there's a very strong cultural weight. The system in France values academic knowledge. And the more you value academic knowledge, the less you value other knowledges, and especially soft skills. So there's a big weight of history, and at this period there's a cultural move, because since years of 2015, there's a strong influence of Europe and Anglo-Saxon culture to value the soft skills and integrate and value what is made out of school. And when I talk about culture, there's one parameter which was one of Hofstede, a big researcher on intercultural issues, who was talking about the question of power. And the question is, how much are you ready to share the power of recognizing and validating skills? And how much do you trust people who could value this knowledge and recognize this knowledge? And the more you think that this remains the objective and the role of university, and the more you think it's not to be shared, the more difficult it is to value this knowledge acquired out of school. So in France, we are now in a kind of cultural transition, and we have to break this power of recognizing from only one perspective the value of people and their knowledge, and share this this power. I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Clément. And when we were having a little chat, I said when I was summarizing, that was indeed one of the things that is quite striking in the French study, and maybe also resonates a bit in what Katz was saying about then the lack of processes, or maybe surprisingly low. Thank you, Elisabetta.
Yeah, what we have confirmed within the desk research during the study is that Slovenia has a strong legislative and strategic foundations that support the recognition of non-formal learning, that there are systemic frameworks that enable the recognition of competences which are acquired through non-formal learning and in the higher education area. So this is set up. However, practices in universities remain inconsistent, underused, and poorly known, especially if we talk about the Erasmus Plus Youth and ESC programs, so competences developed during these programs. And similar to what Kat said and what Clément said, actually, is that the key challenge is not the idea of recognition, but the technical mechanism of how to set it up, because respondents in our interviews said that it's kind of difficult to how to put these non-formally recognized competences into this credit system in higher education institutions. So this gap was the most surprising. We did expect to get this out of the study, so actually we confirmed it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Christina.
Yeah. As to Germany, those of you who are a little bit maybe better acquainted to the general systems in the country, you know that there's a lot of power in the regions. Not everything is defined on the overall state level, but a lot has been left for the so-called Länder level. So that's where the education systems generally are organized, and therefore, when we talk about the case study of Germany, Germany is maybe it's a limited extent to which it can be a case study for the whole of Germany, as there are quite some diversities in the details of how the systems are being set up in the different regions, and it would just have been too huge of a study to understand all of these details. So that's something to be taken into account in the background when talking about the outcomes for Germany. However, what can be generalized is that all universities do have credit transfer systems. They are expected to have that. It's also being checked when the curricula are being accredited. But as mentioned in terms of general insights already as well, it does not only consider the competencies development from external to the higher education system. Especially in the curricula where the social and personal competencies are part of the curricula, even especially in these studies, and in this case, then social and human medicine curricula have been pointed out, highlighted specifically. There is in some cases even the expectation that the students do engage in and gain practical experiences, and that they also can show the competencies then developed within these contexts. So that's perhaps the main points that have been surprising there.
Thanks, Christina. And we've heard already somehow the insight into the common conclusions or the common overview, common insights. How do they resonate in your national perspective? Yeah, because the 4 kind of studies went into one, and then the common conclusions were extracted. How much do you see maybe of the other insights also reflected in your national realities? And whoever would like to take the mic and start.
Yeah, I guess there are quite many similarities, but I think for me, one of the most important one is that, well, in Estonia and in other countries, well, if we see the legislation and like national framework, then we have these opportunities, and there, like officially, there is this acceptance and opportunity to take this non-formal, informal experience and to accept this. But if we see the culture, what is happening in institutions, then in reality it doesn't work. So it's a bit like awareness. People are not really, well, we just had also like more wider study in Estonia, and you can see that they know about the that you can get your former studies accepted, but you're not aware that you get anything else accepted. So people don't know, or possible students and so on. And also the staff, they might have prejudices. They are a bit like afraid the quality of the knowledge and so on, and also that it makes make the feeling that they are not sure how to assess it, or how to describe it. So there would be understanding like what they have done, and whether it's good enough for some grades. So there are like several things, but in general the culture is not there yet, I'd say. We have officially more options, possibilities than we are using right now.
Okay, so to echo what Clement will say, so technically maybe there's no obstacle, but culturally then to implement things that are already planned, maybe there is a bit of barriers. Thank you.
I won't come back to the cultural resistance Tina was talking about, because I think we all agree. But there's another point I would like to insist, and the parallel between the European study and the national study is the question of soft skills versus hard skill. And I had the feedback of many people in the interview saying what is not easy for non-formal education is that we are much focused on soft skills, and soft skills are the most difficult skills to evaluate objectively. So we are on a field which is not easy to value in a diploma. So I think this is a second point which is important on the European level and French level. And the last similar point is about the process. The heavy process doesn't help people to value their skills and try to make them recognized. So it's complex because we are not culturally ready. But this remains very complex and a big barrier.
Thank you. You did promise you will not go back to culture, but here we are. It's there anyway. But indeed, it's the maybe a lack of understanding or a complexity on its own of how to really validate with all the steps something that is not tangible, something that is not so easy to prove. Yeah. Thanks.
If I continue, there are some similarities between countries, but it's also a fact that these national contexts are very different. Like we don't have a higher education course for youth workers like some other countries, but we do have a national vocational qualification system that makes it possible for youth workers to finally have their many years of work recognized, and that was kind of a milestone when this was actually set up. However, what we are looking forward to see in Slovenia at the moment, the implementation of youth work, European Youth Work Agenda is closely connected to recognition, validation, and quality youth work. So there are many things that are happening in this area, and we are looking forward to see where this will bring us, because it's still quite a long way to go. On the other hand, we wish to have acquired more responses with our study, because we cannot make any generalized conclusions. Like you, Christina, said, it's more like snapshots of what is there and what's happening, or what's not happening. So we would need to have a more in-depth study to really see the situation here in Slovenia.
Maybe that's one of the next steps. Let's see. Thanks.
To add then from the German study point of view, maybe to come back to the original question about relating to the overall common insights, perhaps what's interesting to mention is that among the motivators, I've been referring to the three: mobility, accessibility, and civic engagement. What is also quite common, it seems, in Germany as one of the motivators to consider the learning outcomes from the non-formal and informal contexts is also the differentiation, like in the study programs where there is more demand and less places as compared to the interest to access the study program, then validation also seems to be used as a method to differentiate and select for the study programs as well. That's perhaps something to specifically mention. What has also been mentioned in the study is that there is potential in the external methods and tools, such as the German Profil Pass or also Youth Pass. But what seems to be missing is the evidence of how they work and what kind of a benefit they bring along. It very much relates to what you, Clément, say about it's being difficult to pinpoint and assess or evaluate what the competence development in that non-formal, informal learning context has been. So that's something where I see also a task for us in the non-formal, informal sector to try to explain and perhaps in some ways classify the progress or development better, so that it can also be perhaps easier used as evidence. I can see very good reasons for this cultural resistance. Yeah, referring to it a lot. I think in the youth field we also have cultural resistance, even though it's a relatively young sphere. There's a lot of talk also in the youth field about formalization of the non-formal and informal learning and instrumentalization, and the youth field is very careful about that for good reasons. Youth work is process-related, young person-centered, and it is also hard to structure and measure the outcomes, because there's hardly any scales that can be put as basis for what they want to achieve for in this engagement. Therefore, it's, I think, a matter of what is still the common part between these two spheres as well. Where do they match, and what kind of mechanisms and changes are maybe needed in order to make them talk to each other, even though they are different.
Thank you. I think we had a couple of questions prepared about the challenges and so on. I feel that already kind of went into some of the answers. So maybe we focus now a little bit on something that you found in your particular context, something is an opportunity or a development that you think would be quite inspiring maybe for others as well. Yeah, sometimes it's not so easy to transfer from one context to another, but maybe there is something that you're still excited about, that it worked in your context, that maybe would be relevant for others as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's not what is there in our national study yet. But I think in general, one thing that can be like help this and also can be inspiring is that right now in Estonia, only the information about the qualifications is public. But there is development in the direction that all degrees and education and skills would be related to the people on online system somehow. Also, there are of course discussions how public it can be and so on, but they are like trying to make it so more also like competence based and like employers can vouch for their employees skills and so on. So for me at least it sounds quite interesting and inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
I will personally talk about 3 points. One is about the challenge and 2 others about inspiration. But I would like to come back to a challenge, which is a question of why. I mean, I believe that there is no shared vision about why we should validate competencies developed in youth work and volunteering. And this question of why, I think many institutions have a complete different vision of what they expect and who should we target first? Should it concern all young people? And to answer which needs and what kind of needs, especially from the companies, if we talk about employment. But I believe that there is no shared vision, but a multiplicity of little visions and needs added to each other. So that was the first challenge I wanted to talk about. But for me, there are 2 kinds of inspiration that makes us optimist. But that's personal, but I've observed it in France, is that the artificial intelligence could have a role. It should be ethic. There's a big question, but artificial intelligence can help to work on soft skills and recognize soft skills and make them objective. With interviews that can be led by artificial intelligence. But this qualitative approach could be a kind of answer because we don't have enough means, enough people. It would be too much expensive to interview each young people about what they have learned and the soft skills. That's the first point. The second point, talking about evidence, and to come back to what Christina was saying, there are many, many people talk about open badges. We could talk about micro certification coming from the European Commission. Some people talk about micro recognition, but how can we make stronger the trusted third parties approach, a third party that could validate, and the addition of many badges or many recognition could lead to a diploma. But how to make it easy to collect micro recognition, open badges, and all these things, because many actors go in this direction. And I had an interview with networks of companies, and they say we don't need big diplomas. We need evidences and to be secured on 3-4 main competencies when we hired somebody. And that's it. Thank you.
Charlotte?
Yeah. In Slovenia, what I would highlight from our study, maybe it's, well, maybe if there's nothing developed yet in your country, for example, this national vocational qualification system could be something that would be beneficial. I can imagine that competences developed through, let's say, volunteering or in youth work, they're so different. Even if you volunteer for 1 year, you gain so many different competences, and they're and these higher education courses are very specific on different topics, and I can see why it's difficult to then transfer this into some credit points. So this middle step is this qualification system, a vocational qualification system that we have. And it's based on the fact that if you've worked or volunteered somewhere for many years and gained many experiences, then you build up a portfolio. Like Christina said, this is the most common used method. There's a portfolio, there's no exam, there's no, something. With this portfolio, you prove that you have gained this knowledge through your experiences, and you know that. So based on this portfolio, you then have recognized some sort of it's not a diploma level, it's a lower level, but still it helps the employers recognize some experiences that you have. It's in use, and it's beneficial to all those who have acquired it. And we have that on different kinds of levels for cooks, for bakers, for youth workers, for, I don't know, all kinds of this kind of vocational areas that there are. So this is what I would highlight from our study.
I would maybe first mention one quite an inspiring example from the University of Oldenburg in North Germany, where they have centralized the service, the recognition and accreditation of prior learning service. So there's one central contact point in that university for the students, for all of their questions and applications. They support, counsel the students with their applications, and then respectively also forwards the applications to the actual people who should assess them from the respective study discipline point of view. And they also support the assessors. So that seems to be quite an effort within that university to have a kind of centralized service for that. But it also seems to be working in a very individualized and beneficial way for the learners, and making it simpler for the students to access this service. Another point interesting from the German study is that there's a credit transfer database, which is a database aiming to support the assessors also with combining information about the different sources of evidence and documentations that have been submitted, also describing the nature and the nature of the document and source. So this should help the assessors in the whole country within the universities to have perhaps more unified information about the various tools that are there for as documentation of the learning outcomes from different contexts. That seems to be also a general tool that is worthwhile to develop further and make further use of. More back to this cultural and systemic point of view, what the German study calls for is a competence-sensitive course design. So not not the course design that is based on the structure of the content, but based on the problems and tasks that the person needs to be able to solve when completing the studies. And through this shift in thinking, there might be more potential also for the competencies developed in youth work and volunteering, and specifically also the personal and social competencies to fit in and find their place.
Thank you. That's quite exciting, and that doesn't deny, of course, all the challenges that were already highlighted, both cultural, systemic, but also technical in a way. But still, it's nice to see that there are quite some inspiring developments. And we will not reveal everything. Study is there to be read, so you can find out much more actually in the study and with the examples, but also other considerations. So I have one last question that is not in the study. So this is quite an exclusive kind of insight, which is according to the 4 people that we have here that were quite deeply involved in the process. What do you think would be the helpful steps forward? Yeah, either on the national or European level. So where do we go from here? And maybe we reverse the order. So we start from Christina and finish with Katz, just to shake it up a little bit.
I have quite some thoughts on where we can go and what could be done, specifically then from the Youth Pass implementation point of view, and the support that we can and should be providing for that implementation. I think there's potential to connect the information about and the guidance about Youth Pass stronger also to the validation context, and also explain the value of working with Youth Pass in the broader sense. So working generally on the learning process and outcomes within the projects to connect that work also to the potential benefit in the future validation exercises in the personal pathways. That's one thing. Also the other way around, as I have been mentioning earlier, it looks like from the study that there is not so much support in the universities for the first 2 phases or stages of validation for identification and documentation elements in the whole validation process. And that's exactly where the youth field and the support by the youth workers, mentors, and other support people where they have a role to play, where they not only can step in, but where they already do step in. Also, I think in the Estonian study, it became evident that people who have youth work experience, they also already have some familiarity with thinking about their personal competencies and competencies generally, and describing them for their validation purposes. So that's, I think, where Youth Pass, the work with Youth Pass in all the various projects can play a bigger role, and also where we have an argument to promote the way the projects in the EU youth programs, the way they are handled when it comes to the learning dimension and learning process in these projects, and to promote that also towards the other contexts, and in this case, the higher education context.
Well, in Slovenia, one of the first steps would be to, of course, inform higher education institutions about our programs. So this Erasmus Plus Youth and the European Solidarity Corps, and most importantly, their learning outcomes, what's possible to learn there and what kind of competences can be gained. Because although we've done a lot of impact studies, the results have not been directed towards the higher education institutions actually, but more towards some different stakeholders. So that would be one step. Then, of course, to develop some support measures in order to support or raise awareness among prospective students or those young people who have acquired some competences and are involved in higher education institutions, so that they do study, that there are some procedures set, that they can, how they can access it and so on, because in general, I think, or we see that this general attitude is, well, you know, Youth Pass doesn't really give me anything. I mean, they do get these learning experiences, but as Youth Pass is not yet recognized in this kind of institutions, they feel that they cannot actually gain anything with it. So with some strategic raising of awareness and education, how they can do this, this could be done. And then also to explore more in depth all the challenges connected to this. So in these processes of recognition, why they are hard, and how we can support that, how we can overcome these challenges. Yeah, this would be it.
Thank you. Clément?
I wasn't prepared for this question. So I will have a very personal answer. And
Very
I
good.
won't, this is only me and not the words of the French National Agency or anything. But my very personal vision of main steps and main challenges comes from the experience we have in France. There's a guy called Pascal Chaumette, who is in the youth works since many years. And he has set up a tool which is called Diagorient. And he has been targeted by the French state, and he became a state startup to develop his product, because the state saw a big potential in his product. And that's how this product has been developed. And it's focused on identifying skills. Why do I talk about this example? Because that's my very personal vision. I think we have put millions of euros, European Commission, on this topic. And states have put millions of euros on this topic for many years. But the money has been spread in many actors, many projects. And I think it limits the impact of the projects. So I think European Commission should select 3, 4, 5, 6 big projects, saying we see a potential and we support you to make it work. Otherwise, it will remain many little projects with little money and little impact. And we know that if we want to have a big impact, we need good tools and a lot of money to develop these good tools and stop spreading money this way. That's a very personal opinion, but this makes a difference between the United States system with 3, 4, 5, 10 big applications with a lot of money, with much impact, compared to Europe with many little projects, but little impact. Sorry, I wasn't politically correct. Sorry about that, but that's my personal vision. So having a European startup support project.
Thank you. And there is already a link in the chat from France as well. And maybe just to say, this does support what was said in the studies about the fragmentation, right? A little bit, so to unify the efforts. Yeah, Kat?
Yeah, thank you. I would borrow one idea from the other parallel national study of RPL, and as maybe from the from up, where this is the solution from up, in that sense that I think the institutions should describe in detail on their web pages the rules and the process of the recognition of prior learning, and bringing out all these different options, possibilities, and so that could raise the awareness of the students that what is there to take, what they could consider. Because right now it's a bit vague, and they often cite to ministry homepage, but this is like a lot, and so students are like lazy and just take this like shortcuts and to really think about or they are not aware of these other options. So I think that could be one thing to do.
Thank you.